Hello, my name is Darla Drenckhan. I'm an online student for 3D User Interfaces, and I'm going to be presenting the research paper titled Augmenting the Learning Experience in Primary and Secondary School Education, a systematic review of recent trends in augmented reality game-based learning. So, the motivations for this study include: first, there's not a substantial amount of work exploring the combination of augmented reality with game-based learning, and so there's not a lot showing if it's effective, if it's not effective. So that's a big motivation for this study, is that there's not a lot of work towards looking at that combination. So doing the systematic review of the literature is a good way to look at the work that's there to determine this. And so the study reports a systematic review of the literature on augmented reality game-based learning approaches in compulsory education. And it considers the advantages, disadvantages, instructional affordances, and/or just effectiveness of the augmented reality game-based learning across various primary and secondary education subjects. And so the other motivation is that, according to recent studies, content learned through AR technologies can benefit students' long-term memory, their problem-solving skills, enthusiasm towards school, their motivation, and collaborative abilities. And so if that is true, that's a big motivation for the study to confirm that, because if AR can help benefit all those things, we should really be using it more to get those benefits. And so, along with the study, they had 3 main research questions. And their first one is, what are the main game-based learning approaches that students have participated in with the purposes of improving their learning outcomes? And so that one, they're just trying to kind of see what approaches have been done to try to improve students' learning with the augmented reality game-based learning. And second research question that they had with the study is, what AR-enabled devices have been used to enhance the game-based learning experience, and in what instructional conditions has this experience taken place? And the third one is, what are the potential benefits and limitations regarding the learning effectiveness of combining AR with game-based applications in primary and secondary education? And so there's a couple definitions I included from the article that I thought would be helpful, and one of them is inclusion. And so every reviewed paper was read and selected for inclusion in this study based on certain criteria determining the appropriateness of the study. And then they use 3 types of AR in the study, or they look at 3 types. And one of those is marker-based AR, which just uses a camera and some type of visual marker that triggers an event when sensed by a reader. And this is, I'd say, the most common type of AR. And then there's markerless AR, which uses sensors and devices to detect real-world environment, which allows users to place virtual objects into the real world without needing to read an image. And then finally, there's location-based AR, and that uses a GPS, digital compass, velocity meter, etc., which is embedded into the device to provide data based on the user's geographical location. And so, contributions, this study looked at articles published between 2012 and 2017, so it's fairly recent. The studies they looked at described applications or frameworks for augmented reality game-based learning in primary and secondary education. And like I said in the previous slide, there are 3 types of AR considered: marker-based, markerless, and location-based. And so the table to the left is a table that was in this article or the research paper, and it shows primary and secondary education with all 3 of those types of AR, and the number of studies that they had that included them, and the percentage. And so, as you can see, for both studies, marker-based highly outnumbered any of the other ones. So it definitely was the dominant type that was used. And so I just put some related work in here, just some good articles that this paper referenced. And so just advantages and challenges associated with augmented reality for children. That's important because it's important to identify weaknesses in certain things before trying to implement them. And then just a comparison study, just connecting youth, games, and learning, and just really, they're all just relating to AR and game-based AR in learning and how that can be effective. And so here's another table I took from the research paper, and it talks about the technologies used in the studies. And so the majority in primary education used tablets, which I think makes sense. They're bigger screen for primary education. I think they'd probably be the easiest, user-friendly for that age. And then the most used for secondary education was computer combined with video camera, which I was a little surprised by. I thought it would probably be a smartphone, but so that's interesting that it was a computer. But smartphone was second and not super far behind. And so this study was done a little different, pretty differently in terms of methods, because it's not a human subject experiment, but it's a review of literature. And so the first step in what they had to do was plan. And so they had to find a selection of journals. They had to define their inclusion and exclusion criteria so that each journal would have like the same chance of getting selected. You know, they don't just get to select it because they think it has the findings they want. It has to meet the criteria. And then also definitions of categories for the analysis. And their second step in doing this review was actually conducting the review. So actually studying the selections, doing the data extraction, data synthesis, and data coding. And last was reporting the review. So looking at the analysis of the results and discussion of the findings, trends, making conclusions, all that kind of stuff. And so for the study procedure, several studies that they looked at used medium-sized research samples. So that was between 30 and 200 participants. So some good amount of human participants in those studies. And then the studies employed mixed methods to collect quantitative and qualitative data. The most prevalent that were used in these studies were questionnaires, interviews, and surveys, which are pretty common ways to gather that kind of information. And the systematic review of the literature, they used 21 articles that met the inclusion criteria for their review. And so user evaluation, the games for the learning was categorized by 3 things: aim of the game and whether it was originally designed to combine entertainment with learning, and then also the subject that the game was about, like science, math, whatever, and also the platform that the users played the game on, computer, tablet, phone, etc. And then the augmented reality game-based learning effect was also categorized, and this was categorized by learning outcomes relating to the augmented reality game-based learning, the assessment process for specific subjects, or other measurements of psychological issues, and also the effect of augmented reality game-based learning is examined regarding the learning subject's scope in playing and using a specific game. And so results of this study So the research methods used for the instructional design methods, research, and data collection differed greatly among the different studies that they looked at. So it wasn't possible to undertake an accurate meta-analysis, but the overall results were synthesized to extract the main themes under which the findings of the review are identified and presented. And so it turns out that AR game-based learning seems more suitable for teaching science and other STEM subjects, and this is probably because those subjects kind of have like a more harder concepts to bring to life. So the aspect of using a game to help do that can help that. Excuse me. The majority of the studies, as we looked at before, did use marker-based AR. That was definitely the dominating method of AR used. And there also was a pretty big limitation that was observed throughout the studies, and that is that teachers can't manipulate the same system for different educational subjects. And so that would definitely be something to consider. And so here's a table looking at the effectiveness of using augmented reality game-based learning in compulsory educational settings. And for both primary and secondary education, the highest percentage result is that using the AR game-based learning provided better learning performance and learning gains for students. And so that's really that's kind of what they wanted from the study. And so next steps that I think would be a good idea is to further look at what type of content can be effectively taught using AR. It seems like STEM subjects, science, those kind of things are better, but is there ways to effectively use AR to teach English or something that isn't as hard to conceptualize? And then also, students could feel frustrated if the application doesn't track or display the data properly, or if they struggle to use the markers or the device to view augmented information. So I think a good next step would be to make a more user-friendly, customizable version. So like having settings for colorblindness, deafness, etc., to make it more user-friendly to all students and more inclusive, so that like if someone is deaf, they don't like your application shouldn't rely on sound, that kind of thing. And so also another thing is that further research is required on improving the user experience and knowledge construction in the process. And so the potential of AR technology is significant. There's benefits that could include students' cognitive acceleration, increase for their self-management, enhancement to their engagement in practice-based activities. And with the use of the AR technology, students can improve their learning performance, show increased motivation, or achieve both, partly due to improved positive attitudes toward the learning process. So it makes it a lot more fun for students. It makes them eager to learn, which is really what we want. And so thank you for listening. Let me know if you have any questions.